This automation can be particularly powerful if you are an agency owner, for example, or a startup founder, or your company is scaling up and you want to keep your data accurate in your CRM system, easily keep track of meeting notes and transcribe them while also saving time, not having to manually enter your meetings every time in your CRM. By the end of the video, you will learn how to build this automation that takes data from cal.com, but this can work with any other scheduling tool like Calendly, Savvycal, and the other options available in the market. And then how to add that data to Notion, although this can be any other database that you use or spreadsheet that you use. And the workflow will be composed of a trigger that will be the cal.com meeting. So when a new meeting comes in for you, the automation will trigger, it will start, it will get all the meeting data. If you have specific questions included in the meeting form, those questions will be sent to the payload as well in the automation and saved in your CRM as needed. Then the automation will check for the contact, whether the person really exists in your CRM. If yes, then it will update the contact data if needed. If no, then it will create a new contact in your CRM. And subsequently, it will create a new meeting so that you have the meeting page ready. And once you have the meeting page with all the contact info, the company info, the DL info associated with it, so all the context is there for you to prepare for the meeting in a very effective way without wasting time having to find info, but having everything there. And then you can do your prep if needed. You can open the Notion page when the meeting comes. You can use Notion AI meeting notes transcription, if you like, to transcribe the meeting, generate a summary and action items at the end of the meeting. And you can also take notes manually on the Notion page. And all that data then lives in your Notion workspace for AI retrieval, so you can search easily for info for now, for the future, for you, for your team members. And this creates a bit of a harmonious system without the friction of having to manually enter the data all the time. But you just do the work that matters most, that is actually meeting with the lead or with the client or with the partner that you're meeting with, and making sure that you focus on taking notes, understanding the key action items and the key points of the meeting, and then continuing your work on them, reducing your admin time significantly. As I mentioned, you will find the templates for this automation in the description of this video. The templates are available in n8n, in Make, and in Zapier as well. So I'm on the landing page to test this workflow and show you what it looks like. I'm gonna book a meeting here, the Cal link, and I will then head over to my Notion meetings database, and the meeting shows up right here. I can then open it. I can see the name from cal.com, the event time in my time zone. I can add participants here. The contact is automatically related. It was created because it wasn't already there. Otherwise, it would have been found and linked to the meeting properly. If I want, I can link specific projects in this case. And then there is the page body, where I can see the notes entered in the form fields that were in the Cal scheduling link, where there was a question and then I enter some test notes. And now if I want to use the AI meeting notes block, I can just do this and I can transcribe. I can take manual notes and then have a summary by the end of it. Otherwise, I can just use the page regularly to take notes during the meeting. So now let's look at how the n8n workflow looks like. And the first thing to know is there is a trigger, that is the cal.com trigger in here. I selected 3 events: booking created, booking cancelled, and booking rescheduled, because I want all of those events to come to this automation and then handle them based on the type of event to process that data differently. In particular, if it's a new event, then I want to create the meeting just like I showed you. If the event was rescheduled, I want to update the meeting date in Notion. If the event was cancelled, I want to delete the Notion page, meaning archive it, technically speaking. So it will be in the trash bin, recoverable for 30 days. So let's look at the first option here. And I set up the cal.com trigger, select the events, set my account here. And to get your API key in cal.com, go to your settings, then API keys. You can add the new key just like I did here. And then you can copy the key and add it to the n8n dedicated field whenever you set the API key right here. Then you save. If you need to share this with other people in your team, do that from this section. Otherwise, keep the connection private, only accessible to you. You can keep the host as it is. During the testing stage, you will need to make sure that the webhook here is created. Sometimes I notice it's created automatically by n8n, other times it isn't. So if you do not see any webhook, and when you execute this step and you test this out, it doesn't work, then add the webhook manually. So in cal.com, go to the webhook section, select new. Here you will set the webhook provided by n8n that you can find under webhook URL. Once you copy the URL, you have a test URL and the production URL. During the testing phase, you might want to use the test URL. Once you activate the workflow, make sure to switch the URL in cal.com to the production URL so that it will work in production, not just in test. So I can copy this. In here, I'm gonna paste. I can select what events to get to the webhook. Don't need to enter any secret. The payload template, I can keep it as default unless you know what you're doing and you want to customize it. And to see if this works properly, I can select execute step and then ping test. And if it is 200, success, then you can see here there is some sample data that cal.com sends to you so that you can see that the webhook is actually working. And once that is done, then you can create webhook and it will show up here under the webhooks section. Now you might also test with an actual meeting link that you use in cal.com so that you also get all the responses and the form data that are included in your specific link, because then you can map those data into the subsequent modules. The second step in the n8n workflow is to switch. A switch is a node that allows us to take an input based on the cal.com output and then branch out depending on what kind of input it is. In this case, there are three scenarios. Sometimes the event will be booking dash created, and when that's the case, I want a new meeting to be created. So that's the first rule or route in this switch node, and I named it new event. The second option is when an event is cancelled, and this is booking cancelled. That's what it's called in the trigger event parameter in the payload of the cal.com API. So when that is the case, then I want a different route. And then finally, there is a third route, that is when a booking is rescheduled. And for that, I want to reschedule the meeting in Notion as well. And that's why that's a dedicated route. Once I set these routes in this switch node, I will have three routes, one for new event, one for cancelled, one for rescheduled. For new events, I want to continue here. I want to get the contact in my CRM. And in here, in this demo, I'm using the 24 assets template. This is available for sale. If you want to check it out, you can find it in the official Notion marketplace. I will also include a link in the description of this video. And there is an in-depth video about this. And this system includes a light CRM with contacts, companies, deals, and the meetings database that we're using to create a meeting. So the first thing that I do in n8n is to get the contact, because I want to check in my contacts database if that contact based on the email address already exists there. If it doesn't exist, then I will create the contact and then create the meeting and link the contact. If the contact is already in Notion, then I will just create the meeting and link the contact to the meeting. So this is a get database item node in n8n where I set my Notion connection. You can find your Notion connections under settings in your Notion workspace, then connections down below. And if you don't already have a connection that you want to use, you can select develop or manage integrations. This will take you to the integrations tab where you can create bots, get your token, which you can then paste in n8n when you set your credential. I also made a video about this, so I won't go in depth into it. Here, we want to get the contact. So we want to get a database page because contacts is a database in Notion. Get many because maybe there are duplicates. So we want to check that as well. The database, I inserted the ID of the database by getting it in Notion, opening the URL, and then the ID is this string right here. So I copy that, pasted it because the database is always the same that I want to check. I don't need it to be dynamic. I want to return all results, and I want to filter by email equals json.attendees email. And this is data that comes from cal.com after I ran some tests towards this data in the payload. That's the email of the attendee. And I want to check for that to see if the contact really exists in the database. And then there is an if node that has one condition. If get contact is empty, then this is true. And so we will create a contact. If get contact is not empty, then this is false. And so we create a meeting and just link the existing contact to it. On the true route, we create a contact in the contacts database. We get the name from the cal.com attendees parameter, from the cal.com attendees name parameter. We get the email from the cal.com email parameter as well. We could add additional data. For this example, I didn't do it, but you can find when you do your own tests. If you want to include additional data that's available in cal.com, you can do that freely. And finally, we create a meeting in the meetings database by mapping the title from cal.com, mapping the contact with an if statement, if empty get contact, meaning if the contact wasn't found in Notion already, then use the newly created contact, json.id. The event type is mapped from cal.com. Also the time zone is mapped from there because that's provided. We got the cal ID that is saved in Notion to make sure that we then can update the meeting or archive it when it is rescheduled or cancelled. And then I also append the block. It's a paragraph block that takes data from the answer of the person who scheduled the meeting in the form. And that's it for the new event route. Then there is the cancelled event route. When an event is cancelled, then I want to get the meeting in Notion. I get the meeting in the meetings database by filtering by cal ID equals the ID from the cal.com output. Once the meeting is found, I will delete the meeting using the archive page node in n8n. We will archive a page. We will map the ID of that page from the JSON. That is the meeting that was just found in the previous node. And finally, when a meeting is rescheduled, we want to update the date of that meeting. So we will get the meeting, same, get database page by filtering by cal ID, and we will update the meeting date by mapping the date and the time zone from the cal.com output. We can set up the same workflow in Make. That's what it looks like. In Make, there is a native cal.com module as well, but we can only use one type of event at a time as a trigger. And so that's why it is better to actually use a webhook trigger. So instead of using the native module like this, watch booking created, or there are other ones here. Cancelled, created, rescheduled, ended. So we can only look for one type of meeting event at a time. So if you use a webhook instead, we can choose what we want. So I'm going to create a webhook here, name it cal.com test demo. We don't need the API key. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard, head over to cal.com. Under settings, there is the webhooks tab. Select new, and then subscribe URL. I will paste the URL from Make, enable webhook, and then here you can see we can select what triggers we want to specifically send to this webhook, and we can send all of them, and then the Make scenario will handle each event in a different route. Let's send a test ping to see if it works. Yeah, accepted. So if you go back to Make, we will now see successfully determined. That means the data structure was successfully determined. So now I can see there are some data in the payload here. So naturally then we will need here a router that handles the event created, the event rescheduled, and the event cancelled. The first type of event is event scheduled, so a new event. That's why we want to handle this here. And to do that, let's actually send the test data for an actual event scheduled so that we can see exactly what it looks like. So we'll run this module only. I will then go to one of my booking links here that are set up as tests. Okay, let's go back to Make. We got the event, booking created. That's all we need here. And so that's the trigger event type that we want to filter by here. So it's going to be trigger event equal to booking created. And here we're going to name this booking, new booking. And the steps are, first we create a meeting in Notion. We then look for all the attendees and we iterate over them. We then search each attendee in the contacts database. And then we either create the contact, each contact, and relate them to the new meeting that was created before. Or if the contacts exist, then we aggregate them, because a relation property in Notion is an array of data. And so we want to bundle them together. Here there is a data structure as well. I'm going to show you later. We then aggregate them together, and then we relate the contacts to the new meeting so that all the contacts show up in that relation property. Let's conclude setting this up. This is my meetings database that I mapped here, the ID. If you download this scenario, you will find instructions on how to set up each module as well. That's what these notes are about. Okay, here we got the meeting name, which we're going to map from the new payload here. This can be a title, and then start time. This would be start time. Include time, yes. The end time, this would be end time, like so. You can see here I have two separate date properties in my Notion database for the start and the end time of the meeting. But if you want to have them together, then you just map the end time in here on the same date property. I can then also set the meeting type automatically if I already know it, or if there is a field for that in the payload of my event. In my case, there is no data for that in this test, so I'm gonna leave it empty. Okay, now I will save, then we iterate on the attendees. Attendees is an array that we get from cal.com. Here you go. You can see it's an array. It contains one of multiple attendees with the email, the name, etc. And there is a filter here that only continues for if there are more than one attendees, which is always the case. I want to search the contacts. In my contacts database, we match the email address, and if the contact exists, I then have an aggregate to JSON module with an update relation data structure, which I can show you here. Just an ID, text, that's it. We map the ID from the Notion module here, search contacts. So we bundle them together. I then parse JSON right here, aggregate it back, mapping the ID, and then we relate the meeting to the contacts. So this is the meeting database. I map the meeting ID from the create meeting module, and I will then map the array of contacts here from the array aggregator using the map function array ID, because I want to extract all the IDs, separate them by comma in an array fashion, and this will be passed in Notion properly. But if the contact doesn't exist, then we create the contact and we relate that contact to the meeting. So this is the contacts database. We get data from the cal.com module, which has the attendee data here. I'm going to get the display name, I'm going to get the email address, and link the meeting from the create meeting module. Okay, now that we have the logic for the new event handled, we want to set a second route, and the second route will manage the rescheduled events. For that, we do the exact same logic that I showed you in the n8n workflow. So we first search for the meeting based on the cal ID, and then we update the meeting date. Now we want to have an additional route that cancels the meeting page if it is cancelled in cal.com. So the first thing that I'll do is test again, run this module only. This time I'm going to go here in the original meeting that I scheduled, and I'm going to do reschedule. I will then select a different time. I will reschedule. Okay, go back to make. We got the data. This is the event type, and I will select trigger event equal to booking the rescheduled. Okay, save, and I will now find the meeting. For this, we can use a search objects module. I will input my database ID. There is also a guide on how to find that if you like. Otherwise, you can use search. Just type the name of the database that you're looking for, and if the connection has access to it, then it will show up here automatically. Then I will filter by cal ID. Equals, and that will be the event ID, which is right here, booking ID. Here you will see I do not have a cal ID property in the database that I'm using for testing. That's why this is empty. But when you set your database, if all the instructions are followed, then it will have the cal ID text property. You can just select it here, equals booking ID, just like that. I don't need to set any sort or any limit really, because the cal ID is going to be unique unless there are duplicates, in which case there is a bug in the system. So here we can rename this to get meeting, and then the second thing that we do is we update the meeting page. So that would be update database item. We can either select from a list or we can enter manually as well. That works. We can map the database ID from the previous module meeting or enter it manually like so, just like I did before. The page ID is from the previous module, the meeting that was found, and the fields here we can insert manually the names of the properties that you want to change. So that could be start or whatever the name of your property is. So make sure to use the proper name here. Then date, and then start time. We can map it from here, include time, yes. And then let's say we have an end date property. Now we do the same thing, and include time, save. And here we can rename it to update meeting time. Now, last event is meeting is cancelled. So again, I'm gonna save first, right click, run this module only, go to the meeting landing page here, cancel, reason, test, cancel. Going back, here is the event, booking cancelled, and we need another route. And this route is going to be similar to this one, get meeting, and then delete the meeting. So we can actually do this. And I'm going to paste. And then instead of push schedule, it is going to be cancelled. And I can paste from my keyboard, booking cancelled. So first we get the meeting, same exact thing, we don't need to change anything here. Cal ID equals booking ID. And last, we need to archive the database item. There is no native way to do that here, unless this has been recently added. We can try with this one here. Page content ID is going to be the page ID of the meeting. Save, and this deletes the page, which can be found in the trash for 30 days still. The trash is on the bottom left of the sidebar menu in Notion. There is a trash icon, and you can find deleted pages there for 30 days until they're deleted permanently.